The next day dawned bright and early. Barbara made sure she was up before her mum. Jeff would be giving her a lift while Mrs. Hoffman would take Jay to school. There had been no incident overnight, no giggling, and no ghost moving the swing. She was downstairs making her mum a cup of tea after all. She had only complained since the move. It was time to make up some lost ground. Morning, Mrs. Hoffman yawned. I didn't expect you to be up and about so early. I woke up, and there was no point in laying around doing nothing. Barbara looked down the boiling mugs of tea. And I kind of wanted to clear the air between us. She placed the mugs on the table and sat down. Look, the move was tough on all of us. She gripped her daughter's hand. But being in the city was a bit of a strain. I was glad to leave that Dr. Crabbe behind, her daughter stated, seeing her shrink's face in her mind. Mrs. Hoffman suddenly regarded Barbara with concern. How do you feel now? She seemed so uneasy about bringing the subject up. You've coped very well. I can't tell her what's happening to me now. She'll think it's the paranoia setting in again. I'm feeling great now, Mum, like a new person. Glad to hear it. So you're getting a lift to school, are you? That nice young man from the garage. His name's Jeff. He's been so kind to me. Knowing where this conversation would lead, she altered the topic. I think Jake's settling better than the both of us. It seems like Dad had him in mind when he bought the house. After finishing off her tea, Barbara went up to her room. In passing, she glanced at herself in the mirror on the landing. The stress of the first 2 days was showing, dark rings under her eyes. I can't go to school looking like a bog-eyed monster. The rest of the belongings were due to arrive later in the day, so she'd have to make do with the limited supply of clothes. She dressed into jeans and sweatshirt, and dragged out her bulky jacket to protect her from the bitter October winds. Even though she looked better now, Barbara still felt awfully worn. Too many days of fear the future, the threats from creeps and on the phone. It was starting to press down. Quickly she dabbed some foundation under her eyes to cover the wrinkles. It came as a relief when she heard the horn of the Cadillac pulling up. Making sure she had all her things, Barbara ran downstairs shouting a quick goodbye to her mother and brother. The cold wind bit the exposed parts, her cheeks and nose, but the thick jacket was very warm. Jeff gave her a quick wave. He leaned over and opened her door. Good morning. He greeted her kindly. It's pretty nippy out there. It's not that much warmer in here, Barbara replied as she watched her breath curl into the air. I hope the school is heated, otherwise I'm going to end up freezing. Wintermill High was small compared to the other schools Barbara had grown accustomed to. Some of the building was old and in need of repair. It seemed as though that money had been spent on extension after extension. Kids from the next town up, Hellmouth, also used the school, hence the name. Jeff had taken her for a small run around before he dropped her off at the advisor's office. The door was open, so Barbara stepped up and knocked shyly on the door. Come in. The short middle-aged woman called. She was sitting on the other side of a large desk. A small American flag stood on a great pile of paperwork. She had large blue eyes, with glasses to match. Her hair looked as though it had been dyed brown. You must be Barbara Hoffman. I'm Jane Falconer, but the students call me Miss Falconer. She gestured for her to sit down. Your father came in to see me, so everything's been arranged. Yeah, he's good at that sort of thing. She smiled dryly. I hope I picked up some of his organizational skills. The advisor reached forward, picking up a file. I've been know everything from your old school. It's quite good. I see you're a very good artist. I would suggest that you start with Mr. Walker's art class, though I do take it sometimes. Outdoor sketching mostly. She regarded her new student closely. I also took the liberty of putting your name down. I do hope you don't mind. Sounds great. Being such a small high school, we're very trusting of our students to be responsible and mature. You will be allowed off campus during your lunch break, not at any other time. So if rights are abused, then privileges would be revoked. Miss Falconer drew to her feet. Well, I guess that leaves me with the honor. She laughed, taking Barbara by the hand and shaking it. Welcome to Winterfield. She paused for a moment. Welcome to Wintermill High. You'll have to forgive me, I happen to be very patriotic. As Winterfield put more money into the school than our neighboring town. Ms. Falconer. This may sound a little bit off me asking you on my first day, but well, the removal van's coming to our house this afternoon, and I don't really want my mom doing all that by herself. She looked guiltily into her lap. Could I go home after lunch and help? Of course you can. Feeling slightly more at home, Barbara stepped out into the corridor. It was alive, bustling with students going to break. She hoped to see Jeff in the group, but he wasn't. Taking a walk further down past the student car park, there was no old Cadillac. I wonder where's he gone. I guess I can't expect him to be my taxi service. If he doesn't come back, I'll have to walk home. Setting out into the hazy sunshine of the student garden where it was nice and quiet, she was about to sink down on a bench, but a small movement snatched her attention. Barbara got the impression of Ice, again watching her. Then she noticed, standing under one of the many trees, a figure looking right across at her. It moved slowly into the sunlight, red hair shining in the Sunday turning. Barbara headed towards the person, not wanting to be too hasty, acting cool. As she got closer, she could see the watcher closer. The girl was short, but well-built. "Hi there," she called out. "You looked kind of alone over here. So am I. Maybe you could use a friend." "I'm Barbara. My family just moved into town." "I'm Sally," she replied. "Trust me, you don't want to hang around with me. No one else does." Sally had small brown eyes, a few freckles on her rounded face. "No one wants to be seen with the teacher's daughter." "Who's?" "Do you know Miss Falconer?" she asked. "You're my advisor's daughter. I just met her. She seems kind of nice." Even knowing this, Barbara pressed on. "No problem. Why don't we just hang around together? My other friend, Jeff Newborn, has run out on me. Maybe you know him." Sally seemed shocked by the name, but she did her best to hide it. "Yeah, I've seen him around. His dad runs the garage." "That's the same guy, all right. He did me a big favor when we first arrived." Barbara explained a few things about herself, where she had come from and her family. On the other hand, Sally just listened, not adding anything to the one-sided conversation. "I've got art class next thing. How about you?" "Me too," Sally replied. As it turned out, they had the next two classes together. When lunchtime came, Barbara waved goodbye to her new friend. But then she thought about the trek back to the house would be a long, cold and lonely one. Dark rain clouds loomed over, blocking out the hazy sunshine. The road leading up into the woods was still pretty waterlogged since the last spells of rain. Some it would be flooded and their house would really be cut off from the outside world. Barbara slowed her. There was a sloshing sound in the mud behind her. "Is there someone behind me? Was I followed from the school?" She turned, but of course there was no one about. She moved on, only to hear the same splashing footfalls. The safest bet was to make it through the trees. Maybe they won't be able to keep track of her. She slipped her way through the surrounding trees, hoping to lose her pursuer. Leaves crackled under her feet, but the echoing of her own footsteps were still close, getting closer as a hand came down on her shoulder. As she screamed, the sound bouncing off the endless rose trees,